Like and subscribe right now, or else this will be in your bed tonight. r/AskReddit by Planet Reddit. What's your best story of a moment when someone displayed a complete lack of common sense? For Earth Day, the company I work for was giving away free seeds to plant to grow trees. When I offered it to one woman, she said PFFT, as if a tree can actually grow from a seed. I had no possible way to respond to her other than silence. But Minecraft taught me that trees grow from saplings, not seeds. Where do saplings grow from? Two kids who shall remain unnamed were doing science when the older sibling was ready to drop a 5-pound dictionary on the younger sibling's head because an older kid had convinced them that you could know all words instantly with this method. They were told the higher the drop, the better the result. The older sibling was on second floor with younger sibling about 12 feet below. Yes, the experiment was halted by adults before execution. Edit. Grammar. Yeah, it would have been an execution. No, I did it. Now I know big words and have a very photosynthesis vocabulary. Someone asked me, a deaf person hearing aids, if I could hear in the dark. Well, can you? If it was Towson's Bangay, you wouldn't. This woman at a gas station. Oh my god. You know those questions in the standardized tests they give to children that show like a triangle and say, what would this shape look like if I turned it upside down? This is the women those questions are for. How could anyone have such a complete lack of understanding of things in relation to each other in space? Wait, I just realized why she couldn't find the gas cap. Wow, I'm stupid. One time I was at a grocery store and I was looking at those heated things that keep chicken warm. I wondered how hot it was, so I touched it. I got a blister. So it was pretty hot? Yep. My mom freaked out one time when the entire computer screen turned blue. She called me from upstairs to come down and fix it. I looked at it for a second and then tapped the mouse. She had highlighted the whole screen. No less than 3 times have I had to fix my mom's computers because she didn't know, forgot that you have to turn on both the tower and the monitor. And one of those times was at a big company whose IT guy couldn't figure it out either. Sometimes you just don't expect anyone to be that stupid, so you don't think of the simple stuff. As a nurse, I have so many. You'd be surprised at the lack of common sense among nursing students and or doctors. A student nurse came down and said, well, Mr. G didn't eat much of his breakfast today. He didn't even seem to want to chew it. Went up to check on Mr. G. He is sitting supine, bed head raised, pulseless, purple in the face, no breath sounds, clearly deceased, with cereal and scrambled eggs pouring out of his mouth. I'm laughing, but I'm also amazed at the stupidity. Please tell me that the student nurse did not become a nurse afterwards. I'm wondering if Mr. G was already dead or if breakfast killed him. The other day at work, my counterpart misplaced his ID badge. We eventually found it, but not before I asked him, do you want me to call it? That's when you chuckle softly at your own joke. Can you hear me now? My mom grabbed a pan out of the oven with her bare hands because she forgot it would be hot. I've been doing woodworking of some level since I was a kid. In my late 20s I started to get into welding and machining. Wood doesn't really get hot after you cut it, or sand it, or really do whatever to it. And if it does get hot, it catches on fire and gives you a very visible indication that you shouldn't touch it. Metal doesn't do that. It just soaks up the heat and sits there smiling. My woodworking instincts got me burned too many times when dealing with metal. Cut something. Grab it. Ouch, duck, I'm cocksucker. I burned myself rather badly this way. I was using a chop saw with a blade meant for cutting steel. More an abrasive cutter like an angle grinder than an actual saw blade, to cut off a small bar from a large piece of solid aluminum stock. It was just a single cut and I didn't feel like switching out to a more appropriate blade for it. Once my piece was cut and rolled off the side of the saw, I absent-mindedly went to pluck the metal from the workbench between my index and middle finger. The resulting burn was bad enough to make the flesh hiss, and to adhere the metal to my skin like ground beef sticking to the bottom of a hot pan. The skin between my fingers turned a sickly white and a day later sloughed off down to bone when I poked at it through a bandage, causing a weird sensation I'll never forget where it felt like my stomach slit or nausea at the same time the skin slipped free. It took months to heal, though now it seems like I just have a rather absurdly developed writer's callus. Long story short, metal is hot after it's machined, and forgetting that can hurt you badly. BT engineer came out to investigate noise on my line causing my broadband to go off. There was a loud crackling when you picked up the house phone. Murphy's Law meant the day he came, the noise was almost gone and now very faint, but while listening for it, he spotted a retractable phone extension I wasn't using but had out for troubleshooting purposes and said, "That's 15 meters long. It should be 10 at the longest." Confused, I said, "Okay, but it was just to rule out the extension I'm using, to see if the noise was still on. But it's too long. That would explain the noise you're hearing." I said, "No, I get it on the current one as well." He replied, "Well, I can't hear it now." I said, "Yeah, it seems better today." He went back to, "It'll just have been your extension. It's way too long." "But it's too long though." "Yes, that is true, but I was just checking to see if I got the exact same noise with it," which I did. It's not like if you have an 11-meter cable the phone suddenly starts cracking loudly, but it's too long. That's what would have been causing the crackling. This goes on for about 5 minutes while he's listening and the crackling suddenly comes back. "See?" I say desperately. "Yeah, but your extension is too long as I keep saying." Stunned, I pick it up, roll it in and put it back in the cupboard it came from. "Look, it's not currently connected. You can stop I'll learn it'll hear the noise." That proves it wasn't just caused by an extension that's too long, and as I keep telling you, that wasn't plugged in when this started. He thought about this for about 10 long, silent seconds and then shook his head. "I don't know what to tell you. The maximum length for an extension is recommended to be no more than 10 meters. Next thing, I got a bill for £175 for an unnecessary engineer call out due to a fault caused by my equipment. What an utter complete prat. Please complain about him as he is an incompetent ass who needs retraining, or he is just a lazy bastard who leaves the work for other engineers. I am also a BT engineer and I've seen extensions that are hundreds of meters long in factories and offices, and I have no idea where he got that idea from. Please call your service provider again. I know how annoying that is, but from what you've said there is an issue on the line that needs fixing, and the majority of us engineers are actually competent and will get your line working properly again. Plus when the fault is reported, that will cancel the charges on your bill. Hope you have a better experience with the next engineer. Admittedly, that won't be too hard." This was about 9 years ago now, and I did complain but had to still pay as they were going to cancel my service if I didn't. They had warned me ahead of time that if it was due to my equipment, I would be charged, but I was certain, because I'd replaced everything, including the micro filters and ADSL modem, that it wasn't. At the time, my neighbor also had the same noise on their line, and when I mentioned this to him he dismissed it, saying there's no connection between your line and theirs, and I said, "Well, won't they go to the same exchange?" And he said this didn't matter. It's your extension causing the problem. Didn't mean to disparage all BT engineers, by the way. I'm sure if you guys all shared him level of competence the network would have collapsed years ago. A friend and I were making orange juice yesterday when he decided to also put the orange peel in the blender because throwing the orange peel away is a waste of good food. Result: a real waste of good food. My friend always eats the orange peel with the orange, as if it was an apple. I remember in first grade at this little private school, one of the kids opened his lunchbox and said, "Yay, orange peels. My favorite." His mom had packed him orange peels in his lunch. I later realized his family probably didn't like him very much. My friend got a brand new iPhone. He dropped it on the ground to see how strong it is. Not his brightest moment. Maybe with a Nokia you can do that. I've dropped my Lumia a few times and not a scratch on it. What makes some phone screens shatter from smallest drops? Maybe with a Nokia you can do that. Yay. If you want to cause an earthquake, maybe. When my girlfriend was 15, she blew up some balloons for her friend's birthday and was confused when they didn't float. She was genuinely confused when she heard that you needed helium to keep them aloft. I'm gonna be honest, when you said float I imagined that she put them on a body of water, and in my mind I was thinking, how the hell would balloons sink in water? Heavy breathing. I was building a fire in a Franklin stove, big cast iron thing, lid opens on top. I was also trying out old bottles of liquors lying around. I took a mouthful of ancient peppermint schnapps, found it gross, and spit it out into the fire. Thank God for my husband's Spider-Man-like reflexes. He grabbed the back of my shirt and yanked me back. away from the fireball that erupted from the stove. The ends of my hair burnt as it swung forward. I would have blinded myself. I read that as Firelink Shrine and was so confused. One of my friends was selling his car. It was an old shitbox car, but it still was worth about the same amount he purchased it for. One person bidded for it to be purchased at half the original, and another bidder bid for the original price. The third and final bidder bid for just under double original price. Done deal, right? My friend sold it to the guy who bid half price. All three guys were strangers. But the reason my friend sold it to the lowest bidder was because the lowest bidder was begging him to be a nice guy. Basically trying to take advantage of him. My friends advised him not to listen, but he still chose the lowest bidder, passing up a good $10,000 if he'd chosen the highest bidder. A month later, he came up to me and said, "I am such a stupid. What old shitbox car is worth over $10,000? Math says it could be worth as little as $6,666, which is still enough to buy about 10 shitbox cars." I was boiling water for mac and cheese one time and I forgot how a strainer worked and I poured boiling water all over my legs and feet. Needless to say, each time I use the strainer I double check that it is over the sink. Like when you make stock and pour the stock down the sink and keeps the bones and veggies. Duck. But I can imagine the thought process of using the magic water separation device. Join our community Discord, link in description. Worked at an architecture firm. We would always complain about how the modeling software crashed all the time. Clearly not having used said software, our operations manager asked what it meant when it crashed. As in, does that mean the building you're modeling collapses or something? Not having used said software, or any software ever for that matter. Or just really stable software. Watching a show with my friend a few years ago. Detectives found a body and took it to the morgue. So they called him John Doe throughout the episode. Later on, they found the victim's girlfriend wandering through the woods, catatonic and in shock. So they took her to the hospital. Also won't give her name. So, Jane Doe. My friend turned to me with complete and utter amazement and said, "How did the hospital know she was the dead guy's girlfriend if they haven't even been identified yet?" To which I replied that they hadn't figured that out yet. They must have. Otherwise, why would they be calling them by the same last name? Common knowledge. Why would they have the same last name if they were just boyfriend and girlfriend? When I was young, I wanted to see if my pinky would fit in the sharpener. It did, and I rotated my finger and half a nail came off. Nonononono. Once I waited at the bottom of an escalator for a woman to get off so I could go up. She stared at me pretty weird. The other time I waited outside for a glass door to slide open. In my defense, it was a new door and lacked handles. With a group of people forming behind me pissed that they were stuck outside because the store was closed when there were people inside. She probably thought you were going to rob her LMAO. A plug for something I wanted to unplug was stuck in the outlet. I didn't want to snap the cord by pulling on it, and my delicate princess hands were beginning to hurt from gripping the plug and pulling. Suddenly, I thought, wait, I'll just stick my finger between the prongs and jimmy it out that way. In case you didn't know, a plug half stuck in the outlet still has electricity running between the prongs. Now, not knowing, around age 10, that there was electricity running between the prongs is one thing, but the fact that I shocked myself using this exact same thought process a decade later, I think that's a lack of my own common sense. A kid at my elementary school got sent to the hospital after he got injured playing in the school field with his friends. They were throwing steel-tipped darts at each other, and one dart hit the kid right in the eye. I don't think he died, but we didn't see any one-eyed kid in school afterwards either. This raises so many questions, like, why on earth were steel-tipped darts even allowed in a school, much less allowed for kids to play with? Or, did your elementary school experience take place in a rural city in the 70s? When the bagger at the grocery store packs the hot things in with the cold frozen things, or the eggs, soft fruits and veggies, breads on bottom, I know it's nitpicky, but I end up rebagging once I get to the car. I would chalk that up more to I make $8 an hour and don't give a shit than a lack of common sense. Just rebag in front of them. Using a stab blender at about 14. was staring at the blades on it and thought it would be a good idea to touch the circle in the center of the blade where it mounted to the shaft. It really wasn't. Wound up with 10 stitches. Question: what happens when you touch the center? Your finger gets pulled into the blades way quicker than you can pull your hand away. I was showing this new girl how to do closing duties at my job. We were cleaning and I asked her to pledge the wood. She gave me the strangest look and proceeded to put her hand over her heart like she was going to pledge allegiance to the flag. What does it mean, though? Non-native speaker here. Edit. Thanks to the 13 people who explained it to me. But it's okay now. Pledge is a cleaning product. I think that's what he was referring to. I regularly grab the barrel of my curling iron to see if I've turned it off. I'm not typically a stupid woman, but I do this without thinking maybe once a week. My husband says I have lost my hair curling privileges. Open bracket. It's when your spouse is taking away your privileges that you might want to rethink how you do some tasks. A group of friends and I were watching Apollo 13 on the VCR back in '95. It got to the scene where oxygen levels were getting messed up and Kevin Bacon was having trouble thinking straight. One of my idiot friends, we'll call him Chuck, says, "Oh my god, he's illiterate," and he meant it. He thought an Air Force officer had faked his way through high school, college, officers training school, and astronaut training all while not being able to read. I work at a convenience store, which basically means I'm near constantly in contact with people whose mere survival leaves me baffled. Among the best, a woman who came in to use the restroom. It's out of order that day, and I tell her that. What's that mean? UHH. It means it's not working, so I can't use it. No. Why not? This woman drove here. There's one guy who comes in every now and then who's banned for shoplifting and knows it. I've had to kick him out of the store around 6 times, including tonight, because he thinks I don't know who he is. I legally can't sell beer past midnight, which means that every night I see 4 or 5 people who try and argue the time with me at 12:03. There are people that come in, ask me a question, and then apparently lose interest in the conversation. Every response to my first answer is "huh." My boss is one of these people. Oh yeah, and a couple people who have finished with the gas pump and instead of hanging it up just kinda left it on the ground. Do you live in one of those areas with lead poisoning? I saw a worker try to pick up a piece of red hot steel. No quality of leather gloves are going to survive that, mate. My friend spent 10 minutes looking around for his phone even though he had it in his hand. We were telling him to call it and he was trying to phone it but complaining it was engaged. The penny eventually dropped. A friend and I were playing COD, split screen, and I was absolutely destroying him. Then my mum walked in and asked, "Which screen are you?" We both said top screen. Turns out he thought he was my screen for the past 15 minutes. I once stood in front of the front door to my house for a few minutes, wondering why the door wouldn't unlock. It took me those few minutes to realize that I was pointing my car keys at the door and pressing the unlock button, wondering why that wasn't opening the door. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.